It's not sexual. It's a meeting of minds.
Linda believes in love. She's passionately romantic.
Here's Fanny.
Is life only about love?
Yes! Relax, all discipline. I could easily come to nothing.
So you aspire to being wicked and adulterous, do you, Linda?
No. I aspire to true love.
Love is for grown-ups, as you'll discover one day.
Come fight the fascists with me.
Better get dressed first.
I see trouble ahead.
An adulterous woman is the single most disgusting thing there is!
You can't say that her life isn't exciting.
I do feel like a terrible old black sheep.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Nicholson and welcome to this discussion, which is part of the BFI and Radio Times TV Festival on the major new drama for BBC One, The Pursuit of Love. I'm thrilled to be joined by a panel of puns. We've got the writer, director and the bolter herself, Emily Mortimer. We have Lily James, producer and who plays Linda Radlett. We have Emily Beecham, who plays Fanny Logan. Executive producer Frith Tiplady, executive producer Charles Collier, and we have Andrew Scott, who plays Lord Merlin. Welcome to the panel, everyone. I'm so thrilled that you're all here. And we should start with the most important question, which is how did you distinguish between Emily's on set? Did you have code names? Were there nicknames? Lily, as a non-Emily, maybe you could answer this one. How did you make it clear who you were talking to?
We did like M and M. No, I don't actually know that we fully ever decided this, but I call Emily M's and Emily. Oh no, I think I called you both M. Or maybe we did.
There's an aunt Emily as well, who's a character in
Yeah.
the program, which made it like triply confusing. I don't think we ever really established a rule.
M Beach.
M Beach.
Oh, M.
I mean, our first AD tried M Beach for a while.
M Beach, yeah.
How long did M Beach last?
Not very long.
He stuck with it though.
Emily Mortimer, then you write, direct and act in this. How did this whole story begin for you?
It began with Charles, who's one of the producers, coming to me and suggesting that I might try to adapt the book, and I had loved the book when I was growing up and remembered loving it, but didn't remember exactly why or really much about it. So then I went back and read it, and I was just so struck by how just sort of wickedly funny, completely sort of allergic to earnestness, how kind of radical it still feels about women, and it just felt like a breath of air. You just felt forgiven reading it, you know, and any questions I might have had about, you know, knowing I love the book but not having read it recently, about, you know, does the world really need another costume drama right now, about sort of, you know, posh people in a big house in the country, in England somewhere, like it was just completely eradicated by reading the book again and just feeling like it really felt like a really radical voice, female voice, and it was just so funny and so entertaining and so great. And I felt like, no, I do really want to do this, and that was, and then the whole process became about not letting the book down, you know, trying to make the experience of watching the show feel as exciting as the experience of reading the book is.
Charles, what was it about Emily that made you take this idea to her?
So many things, but I think being a sort of fanboy of Doll and M's, and then realizing there are lots of secret fanboys of Doll and M's. And if you haven't seen the show, go and find the show. And it was something that Emily Mortimer, Dolly Wells, who's also acting in the show, put together. And it's the story of two great friends who love each other, but also who are jealous of each other and who support each other, but kind of slightly delight in moments of Schadenfreude. And there was a dynamic in that show which just happens, I think, to be so close to the central dynamic of The Pursuit of Love, particularly when it comes to adapting that story for the screen. Because if you can allow both these two lead female characters to come across, which is hard, it works differently in the book, of course, because in the book it's Fanny is the narrator. She writes the story, but it's the story of Linda. And I thought, if we're going to get this right, Fanny has to come alive too. It's the story of these two, and I thought Emily would be the one who would know how to do that, to bring these two girls together in the way that she did. So that was why. I'd also read a script that Emily had written quite a long time ago, in sort of early days when Emily was sort of at the beginning of her acting career, and I just loved this script. It must be 15 years ago. One of those scripts that was just, I don't think Emily, don't know where it is now, but I loved that script and I just remembered it. So it's the way these things happen.
But adapting it is one thing, directing it, and it's your first it's your directorial debut. So how did it go from adapting it to then becoming the director?
Lily, it's Lily's fault. Lily is the person I have to thank for this extraordinary, amazing experience that I will treasure my whole life, and I feel so grateful to her for it. That she kind of, she basically sort of said that she thought I could do it, and I now in retrospect realize I was kind of directing it, kind of as I was writing it. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be directing it. But I've watched enough movies in my life, and I've been on enough film sets in my life that I knew, and I've seen enough bad adaptations of things to know that I had to make it work kind of visually, as I was writing it. And I guess being very controlling as I was writing it about kind of where the camera was going to be and what the look and feel of the show was going to be. And I even put, I think, certain tracks in there that I wanted to play. Like, I was being kind of annoyingly controlling and kind of bossy in the way that I wrote the script, but not thinking that I was ever going to be the person to direct it.
Every time you spoke about it, you talked like a director. And so every time we talked about what you'd want from a director, it became clear to everyone who spoke to you that you had to do it. So I think we definitely responded to that. Lily, I know, put the gem in your idea, but it became clear if we put someone else in there, they'd be trying to translate you, and that just wouldn't make sense at all.
Yes, I do. Yeah, if they put someone else in there, I would have been such a pain in their ass. So it sort of cut out the middleman, I guess. But it was still on everybody here, all these incredible producers, and Lily and Emily, just such a kind of leap of faith that they let me do it. And I feel so incredibly grateful to everybody.
I think there's another thing, Emily, as well, which is that it's as 3 hours, it allowed us to think about it as if we were making a feature film at times. Of course, all of the discipline of making great TV was there, and brilliant people at the BBC, making sure we didn't forget that for 1 second. But I think the way in which Emily was able to bring it together as a writer, as executive producer, as a director, that felt very filmic in many ways. And we all felt it would be something where such a huge thing to step up into your first directorial gig like this. But Emily just was brilliant from the start, frankly.
Lily, at what stage did you get involved in this then?
I can't even remember. It's been, Charles, help me. It's been years, hasn't it? This idea that came about from Charles and also Ang Harrod, my agent, and we talked about it at dinners, and there was this impulse to create this story now and on screen, and just how intoxicating and brilliant and precious and wonderful the story is, and the characters, and then it just happened, and then it stopped because of COVID, and then we miraculously started and got it done, and it's just the whole experience was just really special.
We'd started when Lily was like after drama school, sort of that experience of being in your early 20s and just this incredible energy and passion for life and just the desire to get out there and to do brilliant things that, of course, you know, now it becomes possible. But for the women of that generation, who couldn't even have jobs, you know, it wasn't open. And just Linda as a character, her energy, her passion, her spirit, that there would just be, I think there are a few occasions where Lily would say something, God, that's very like Linda Radlett. She might say that. And it went from there. Like, that's about 8 years ago, maybe more.
Yeah. So I think if you distill the story down to its most crude elements, it's about two women looking for husbands, but it's so much more than that. And as this production shows, there's so much more to it than that. It feels modern, it's radical, it's about young women taking control of their lives, and it's very much not your typical period drama. Emily, how did you settle on the tone for it? Emily Mortimer.
I don't know. I guess it's back to what I said initially, which is just it kept coming back to that. I just don't want to let this book down. And God knows, probably if Nancy Mitford saw it, she'd be sort of just turning in her grave. I don't know. But I did feel like at least I want to feel as kind of excited and sort of, I want to feel the excitement and the danger and the longing and the kind of irreverence of I feel when I'm reading the book, when I'm watching this show, and I just was trying all the time to think of ways of communicating that visually. And I was trying to think of films that I had loved that were maybe set in another time, but didn't feel like they were about people in a kind of bygone era in sort of dusty costumes, and felt like they were about you as you were watching it.
What did I tell you about air raids not killing people? My bed simply went through the floor and plon and I went on it. Perfectly comfortable.
Linda Radlett was not only my favourite cousin, but then, and for many years, my favourite human being.
Don't pity me, Fanny. I've had 5 months of perfect and unalloyed happiness. Very few people can say that in the course of long lives, I imagine. Very few.
As we turned down the drive at Alconley, I asked myself if Linda's 5 months of perfect happiness were quite worth all the chaos and confusion of the other 29 years. But I often thought about things like that with Linda.
It always feels like Christmas coming home.
I know.
Zach Nichols, who's the DP, I think, has created this kind of visual universe that is really just lends so much to the experience of watching it. And we talked a lot about, you know, the way that the camera works and being able to have moments of great kind of fluidity and looseness and freedom with the camera. So it was really handheld mostly, but then interspersed with this kind of quite formal, sort of more symmetrical shots and to be able to, so, but, you know, I don't know, it was everything was done with intention and not just for the sake of sort of making it feel sort of, you know, exciting. But I don't know really what the answer to any of it is, apart from I was just allergic to the idea of adding to the, as I said, just to the piles and piles of kind of costume dramas and it not being something that felt fresh, you know.
You mentioned Nancy Mitford, and her sense of humour, I think, is quite outrageous even to the modern reader. Was it important to keep that wicked sense of humour in there? I'm thinking about Uncle Matthew hunting the children instead of foxes, for example.
Yeah, it was just tremendously important to keep her wickedness, full stop, but her wicked sense of humour for sure. And I think it's makes you feel as you're reading the book, and hopefully as you're watching the show, that you're kind of, it's not just a guilty pleasure, that it's actually kind of weirdly relevant. Like there's a line early on in the book, which I've got Emily's character Fanny saying in voiceover, which is, you know, had the Radlett children been poor, their father would no doubt have been sent to prison for beating and refusing to educate them, which is kind of, but it's so great because it's sort of, you had to sort of go back and say, wait, did I just read that? You know, it's really funny and kind of really revealing in this kind of, but as I said, there's no earnestness to it. So you kind of blink and you miss it and you're on to the next thing. But I think she manages to, her tone is so great because she manages to address lots of kind of really kind of important issues that are, but in a way that is I don't know, it's kind of sleight of hand. Like she deals with things like a mother rejecting her baby, or like sort of, you know, shell shock from the war, or abuse, physical abuse in families, or xenophobia, or all of these things, but in a way that is so funny. And I don't know, it just is, it makes it kind of a way of into thinking about all those things that is unusual, and to me actually as one's reading the book anyway, much more effective somehow.
I'm going to segue here slightly clumsily, but there's a beautiful friendship in this between Lord Merlin and Linda as well that seems to follow the same lines. It does feel like Linda could do anything and Lord Merlin would find it amusing. Andrew, who were your inspirations for this character?
Well, the thing I loved about the character is that he's a rebel, and he's fluid. You know, it's something we talk about a lot, you know, in this current day and age. But he's genuinely audacious and brave. But the thing that I think is so extraordinary about him is that he's so full of love and bravery. And I love the fact that you don't really, in the relationship between the two of them, that you don't really know necessarily what it is all the time. And I think that's really nice, that sometimes we don't always have to, because sometimes I think we are in love with our friends and sometimes we're not in love with the people that we're supposed to be in love with, and that it's just a little bit messy, and love is messy. And but a constant in our life, I think I love the fact, you know, it's a supporting character, but I literally think of him as a supporting character. I think he literally supports her all the way through, sometimes by being quite forthright. Yeah, I love the idea that these stories, this idea of sort of sexual and gender identity didn't just begin in 2006. You know, this has been going on since the dawn of humanity, and certainly in the last century. So yeah, it's just a wonderful character to play.
And is there a little touch of Bowie in there?
I don't know. Do you think so? I don't know. I mean, who can say for definite?
Well, I did.
Maybe. Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, somebody like, the reason that we all adore David Bowie is because, you know, you're like, why? There's a question, and I love that in people who are brave enough not to say I am this. People say a lot of the time, speaking as a something, as a which I always find a little bit troubling in when people say that, when we give our opinion saying as a man, as a woman, as a gay person, as a white person, as a parent, as a teacher, as an Irish person. I always feel like this is what I believe, as if we have to qualify, or as if that's possible. And so the fact that he doesn't try and qualify himself, I think he just says this is what it is, and it may be this and it may be that. The question is always much more interesting than the answer, I think.
Emily Beecham, Fanny, as Charles was saying, this is much more Fanny and Linda's story rather than just Linda's story, but she can be the straight man, can't she, to Linda's follies. How do you prepare to play a character like that?
Well, they contrast. I sort of figured they're kind of like magnets, really, so they pull together and then next minute they're strangers, so there's a massive push and pull between their relationship, which I think is possibly a natural for friends who have grown up together and known each other since children and been polar opposites, and then take different directions in life. So I think well most of Fanny's sort of straight side, as you say, is because an awful lot of the time Fanny's holding on to security and is fearing for Linda's as Linda's freewheeling into these sort of dangerous, passionate, all-consuming love affairs, which probably Fanny's vicariously living through, enjoying, experiencing through Linda. But yeah, usually I think Fanny values different things to Linda in terms of like security and education, and she was taught to value education.
Hello, darling. You've got so tall.
Hello, Bolter.
Mummy. I'm your mummy. Was that Linda I just saw you with?
Yes.
Oh no, it's such a mistake to be friends with girls who are more beautiful than one is, darling. It's too dispiriting. Who was she with?
Tony Krosick.
Tony? Oh, that won't last. I want you to meet my friend, Colin. He's so nice. He's here somewhere.
What happened to your white hunter?
Dead. Shot in the head during a safari. It's too sad.
Oh, well, at least you didn't have to bolt.
No. Yes, for once. First one I lost respectably. To death. Fanny, dear. You're very funny. I'm going to go and fetch lovely Colin for you to meet.
What do you think she gets from that friendship? Because they're incredibly devoted and they obviously love each other very much, but you do sometimes wonder what Fanny gets out of that friendship. So what do you think she does?
I feel like Linda's sort of, to Fanny, Linda's a part of herself almost, but it's also a part that she's too a personality that she's too frightened to have, or she's too cautious to take risks. I mean, Fanny was abandoned by her mother when she was younger, and throughout the whole show she's really tussling in herself, or we decided she was tussling with herself as to how she feels about that. And as her life progresses and she becomes a mother herself, etc., she starts to see it from another point of view and gain understanding and things like that.
What was really interesting about the book, and we played on a lot in this show too, is that these girls are best friends, and Fanny has been abandoned as a baby by a woman who's kind of very similar in some ways to Linda, her best friend, and she's obviously drawn to this Linda, this extraordinary character, partly because she reminds her of her mother, and partly because she reminds her of some side of herself that she's sort of, as Emily said, sort of negated or being too scared to explore because it's sort of so traumatizing. And as the show progresses through the next two episodes, you start to see Fanny really grappling with that kind of paradox of trying to understand whether she should, whether one should live life brightly and hurl oneself at experience like Linda and like her mother did, or whether one should be more careful and observant and who she is quite and there are all sorts of sort of funny moments where that confusion about who she is manifests itself, one of which being a sort of weird dream where Emily had to run along the banks of the Seine in a fur coat and a sort of negligee with sunglasses on, sort of saying, "I love Paris." Still makes me laugh so much.
Lily, how liberating was it to play a character who is as free seeming as Linda Radlett?
It was a remarkable experience living inside of this character, and she's so courageous, and I always think it's funny with the husband sort of become irrelevant because it's about her desperately trying to figure out who she is and what she wants, and find herself through these experiences, and she refuses to let herself be reduced or defined or sort of blocked at all, which it obviously has its huge consequences and loss and pain, but you know, with her relationship with her daughter and with her friendships, and there's always a cost to those choices. But she, you know, it was like just anything that comes into your head you say, or anything you feel you express, or any impulse you have you follow. And so that was very freeing within scenes and within the storytelling, because you know, you could really try anything, and alongside that being with Emily, and just it was just like so empowering and wonderful. Yeah.
Do you think that rebellious spirit is what resonates so strongly today? Because I think, you know, we keep talking about how modern the story feels, both in this production and the story itself. Do you think that's why? Do you think it's her rebellion that makes her feel so relevant still today?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it really is, because it's like, despite the lack of options and despite what society says, she refuses to abide by that and makes her own rules, and I think she's really honest as well about the sacrifices, and she sort of, even though she hides it, she's aware of those sacrifices, but her need to really live and to grow as a woman and as a person outweighs that. And I think that is radical. And there's those few people in life that you look up to and you go, wow, God, I wish I could be as brave as you. I wish I could really put yourself first. And it still feels she just doesn't let herself get trapped.
Ever since I was a small child, I was sent to spend the Christmas holidays with Linda in a large, ugly, north-facing house high on a hill in Oxfordshire. Most of these Christmases were marked with violence. There was the time Linda's pony lay on her in the brook and nearly drowned her. The time she tried to kill herself in an attempt to rejoin a smelly old border terrier which Uncle Matthew had put down. The time she decided to tell the daughters of some neighbours the facts of life, resulting in dreadful beatings from Uncle Matthew. And lunch and alone for 2 whole weeks. Linda hated to be alone. She was a wild and nervous creature, full of passion and longing. But of all the Christmases, the Christmas I remember the most was when we were 17, and Linda decided that her life had to begin.
I feel that this really captures something about the intimacy and intricacies of female friendship. And it's interesting, Charles, that you brought up Doll and Em, because it did, not just because of Emily's involvement, but it did remind me of Doll and Em in that respect as well. Is that a theme that interests you, Emily?
I guess it must be. I didn't realize it was necessarily. I mean, my friendship with Dolly is definitely one of the sort of most major relationships in my life, and it's like nothing else. It's like no other relationship, and it's very rich and very deep, and for all the talk we do about men, which we do a lot, is not really about men. It's about exploring who we both are as women in relation to each other and ourselves, and it's kind of so I guess it is something that really must really fascinate me. It's definitely been something that's been just a hugely important part of my life, and given me the confidence to do this.
Using modern bands, in the first episode I spotted New Order, I spotted La Tigre. What was behind the choice, Emily, to use modern music rather than, you know, the scratchy 78s or the string quartets or the things you might expect to find? Why use modern bands?
It's funny, there was a song that didn't end up making it into the cut, partly because it was just too, it would have cost us too much, unfortunately, which was Grace Jones singing La Vie en Rose, which I had always written into the script in the third episode when Linda's in Paris on her sort of like on shopping basically, and I had always kind of imagined that to that track, and then I started thinking, I just sort of, but I don't know quite why, I just did. I thought that would be great there, and then that, just having put that in there, I just gave me free rein to think you could go anywhere with the music, and I am particularly allergic to the music that is contemporary to that period, which is just so depressing, that sort of weird jazz, but it's not sexy jazz at all. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, it's just so it's just so uncool. And so I was just like, oh, in a way that was almost the only rule, which is it can be anything apart from music that is contemporary to the period, apart from, I think Tony Krosig is playing in his room at Oxford an LP that is exactly contemporary to the time, but it was so sort of sexless, weirdly, even though it was such a kind of exciting time. The music really wasn't, to me or to my ear, and it's got a rock and roll soul. It really does. Linda has a rock and roll soul, and there's something about it, about the material, that just felt like it kind of merited it and kind of deserved it, and that you couldn't make something that didn't have a bit of that kind of punk rock spirit somehow. But I don't know, I tried anyway. I don't know, you know, who knows whether it actually managed it, but I thought, no, I'm going to try. And I think it suits it. To me, it doesn't feel imposed on it, hopefully.
And it was made under quite extraordinary circumstances as well, wasn't it, Frith? You were one of the first major productions to come back after that first shutdown. So in a practical way, how did it all work?
Well, when the first shutdown happened, we were, I think, 2 weeks away from filming. So we'd found all the locations, but it was just that sort of unknownness. And I seem to remember this time last year when it was all sunny, it was like, we should be filming because it's sunny and beautiful. And we were all not knowing if we could stand up again. But, funnily, soap operas did a brilliant job in this country getting up and running first, but they would sort of socially distance. And the thought of doing this show and, Fanny and Linda not hugging or touching, it was just like, this can't be the case. So I worked really hard with Charles, and the BFC were doing excellent work in trying to get protocols in place. But we were one of the first, and we had brilliant support from Amazon, BBC, but also I would say the cast and the crew. There was this sort of, we're back to work, sort of gung-ho-ness on set. And very much led by Emily, she sort of attracted a brilliant group of HODs and therefore crew who just really believed in the show. And it sort of had this sort of, I don't know, real sense of, we want to get the whole industry back and running. That sort of first day when you turned up, the unit base looked like a really bad festival with loads of marquees and no beer anywhere, but it just sort of felt like organised and everyone was just really wanting it to work. And then you just got used to people having masks. I mean, the cast didn't, obviously, because they had to be able to act with each other and be near each other. And everyone just got on with it. And at the same time, sort of Emily was like a duck to water directing. It felt like that was just, she was meant to do it. So it was suddenly, within one day, the loveliest set. I know everyone says this about every show, but it generally felt the loveliest set we'd ever been on. We were in a beautiful country house, and everyone was just really happy to be there and back filming again. And I think that probably shows through in the show.
It was amazing having, having dancers on the set and musicians who I mean, I never would have got, I don't think, such extraordinary dancers and a choreographer, Arthur Pitter, and then that band that I talked about. All these people were sort of unheard of, unusually available, and hadn't been able to perform in front of people for months and months and months, and there was just something so lovely and beautiful about these dancers getting to dance for the first time, and these musicians getting to play for the first time in front of people, and also just getting to go to a party, even if it was a sort of pretend one. Well, just amazing at that moment, and like it should almost not be allowed. But
that's more of the rock and roll spirit right there. Emily, as your directing debut, was it everything you had dreamed of and more?
I did really enjoy it. I really did. I keep sort of feeling weird saying that because it's not my normal MO, is to sort of say, oh God, it was all a bit sort of shit or whatever, but I can't really do that with this. I really liked it. I think it was partly just it really suited me because I didn't have time to think about anything apart from it. And I spend my life, thinking too much about things and worrying about things. And there was no room for that at all. And all you had to do was just kind of immerse yourself in this world and watch these amazing, amazing actors come and be just brilliant every second of every day. And I don't know, I did really love it. Yes, I really loved it.
Watching Emily at the end of every take, you just look delighted with everybody. So I think actors never have so much, feedback. It was just sort of joyous that the performances everyone was giving and what you were giving to them as a director, you could really feel that on set.
It made me fall in love with acting in a way that I have never done before. I've always been so tortured by it. And and actually the only days that I really was miserable were the days that I was acting, because I just couldn't handle it at all. And I didn't show up either as an actor or a director. I was just I don't know what happened to me those days. But no, just watching actors perform, and these three here in particular, but everybody, you're just like, at any given moment on the set, the person that's doing the most challenging and extraordinary thing are the actors, and it can't be good unless something is happening inside them at that moment as the camera's going, and it's really, really cool watching it from a different perspective. I loved it.
Do you think you will do more? Would you be interested in Love in a Cold Climate, maybe?
Charles, you can answer that one.
I think that's next. I think if audiences take this to their hearts, we'd love to come back and look at Love in a Cold Climate. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will take it to their hearts. Thank you to the panel who have come together over various different time zones and countries to make this happen. The Pursuit of Love will launch soon on BBC One and BBC iPlayer. I'm Rebecca Nicholson. This has been part of the BFI and Radio Times TV Festival in association with BBC Drama. The BFI is a charity organisation, so if you've enjoyed this discussion, then please do consider donating. Details of how to donate will appear on your screens now. Thank you.